The following is an excerpt from the book Experiences of Thought by Anthony Kahn, available now on Amazon.com and Kindle. Outside the box, the coin at the bottom of the well. If a tree falls in the woods but no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Can a tree fall in the woods if the event is not part of the experience of a conscious being? What even is sound? Is it merely the longitudinal compression waves that travel through the air from a vibrating source? Or is it an experience that is had upon those waves, triggering our sense of hearing? The experience would not be had if the vibrating source did not exist. That much is common sense. But would the vibrating source exist if the experience was not had? Each is inseparable from the other in a way, for neither can be conceptualized without the other. How can a vibrating source be distinguished from nothingness except by entering conscious thought? What is conscious thought but nothingness if it perceives nothing? We have thus far persistently described the consciousness that distinguishes us from the philosophical p-zombie as the capacity to experience, and this is indeed an excellent description of that intangible je ne sais quoi that is unique to living beings. But is experience the same thing as thought? Can the two terms be used interchangeably? There is certainly a strong overlap, and we have at times done just that. But it is useful to consider how we might distinguish one from the other in order to gain a deeper picture of the operation of the mind. When we speak of experience, we are usually referring to sensations and feelings, emotions and desires. An experience could be sensory in origin, taking the form of a mental apprehension of an environmental stimuli, such as intense heat causing the sensation of pain. Alternatively, it could be an emotional response to our thoughts, such as happiness or sadness. In both cases, experience is a reactionary quality and can be envisaged as the qualia that result from stimuli. Our usual concept of thought is not quite the same thing and usually centers around mental imagery and self-talk as well as pure imagination. Thought would appear to concern itself more with information taking form in the mind, whilst experience is our personal response to this information. The two are intertwined and inseparable, however. To think is to experience. To experience is to think. To think is to exist. To experience is to exist. We are mind, and the mind is experiences of thought. At the outset of our journey together, our stated objective was to dive as deeply into the nature of reality as we possibly could. We were to dig down through the layers of our knowledge to try and identify that point at which it became impossible to penetrate any further. Essentially, we were to set out on a hunt for the ultimate buried treasure, the wellspring from which all that exists emanates. In so doing, we would hopefully arrive at those properties of the universe which are fundamental. We have now excavated our way through the surface layers of model making and human reasoning. We have sunken a shaft through the middle layers of the material and mental worlds and the logic that bind them. And now, in this chapter, we have begun our expedition through the proposed core. We have emphasized that our journey would be full of uncertainty, especially at the depths of the core, and must concede that our perception of the core is once again just a model, and hence a surface-level feature of our reality. Furthermore, we must acknowledge that it is not even a testable model, and thus not the province of science, though arguably no true foundation of reality ever could be. Nevertheless, via logical deduction and an emphasis of the ultimate importance and inseparableness of consciousness from that which we call the material world, we have laid down our assumptions and are ready to examine what might be down there. Although we have already encountered some fairly conspicuous hints, we shovel away that last bit of philosophical debris and see a glimmer of gold flicker before us, a golden coin of immeasurable worth. It is but a single coin, but like all coins, it has two faces. On examining the exposed side of the coin, we see absolutely nothing. Disappointedly, we flip it over, but likewise, there is nothing. Dismayed, we hold it up to show our fellow explorers. But then, to our surprise, they claim that they can see a whole universe contained within their face of the coin. Looking more closely, our jaw drops in amazement as we too realize that we can see an entire universe in our own face. What magic is this? The coin is very shiny, and occasionally our own reflection flickers across its surface. Meanwhile, the universe that we see grows ever more expansive and majestic the longer we look, and especially so as more of our fellow explorers stare into its opposite face. So what are we looking at? What have we discovered? The two faces of the coin are consciousness and information, but they are intimately connected and inseparable from each other, so much so that one ceases to exist without the other. The coin itself is the marriage of the mental and material universe, the sum of all information as experienced by consciousness and thus the combination of its two sides. But if we study the coin carefully, something interesting emerges. You see, the side of the coin that is consciousness and the side that is information is subjective. Our face of the coin is always consciousness, experiences of thought, whilst the opposite face is always information that we interpret as the outside world. But to that which from our perspective is the outside world, it is our face that is information, and its face that is consciousness. The universe itself is conscious, but that consciousness is divided among the countless individual conscious beings of which it is comprised. Every conscious being is formed from the combined existence of every other conscious being and becomes its own subjective realization of that which we might call the objective universe. Here lies the origin of the deterministic nature of existence. But the objective universe is ultimately the same entity that we described earlier in section 5.8 as a multiverse of experience, and is thus the entangled network of every individual subjective conscious being. So what we have in the end is a kind of hybrid between idealism and panpsychism, or at least an idealistic model which can function in the same way. When we consider a material object, let's say our apple from section 5.8, we are not looking at an object that possesses consciousness, but rather at an object comprised of consciousness. It is a part of our mind/universe, but also a part of other minds/universes. The apple is thus both information from the outside world and conscious thought simultaneously, a material object to be sure, but nevertheless a product of mind. The material universe is indeed material insofar as our experience of it, but that experience is an integral part of consciousness itself, and thus the material universe is ultimately the stuff of consciousness. As with all things, the very essence of material existence is only ultimately describable from the perspective of consciousness. Our universe is not producible within the framework of solipsism, however, because there is undeniably an outside world that can only be made sense of if we assume the existence of other minds. More than this, the outside world is other minds, and indeed the combination of all minds. Our personal experiences, our side of the coin, are thus the embodiment of the thoughts of many, the information on the other side of the coin. We are experiences of thought.